Ryan Reynolds here for, I guess, my 100th Mint commercial. No, don't. No. I mean, honestly, when I started this, I thought I only have to do like 4 of these. I mean, it's unlimited premium wireless for $15 a month. How are there still people paying 2 or 3 times that much? I'm sorry, I shouldn't be victim blaming here. Give it a try at mintmobile.com/save. Whenever you're ready.
$45 upfront payment equivalent to $15 per month. New customers on first 3-month plan only. Taxes and fees extra. Speed slower above 40 gigabytes. See details.
Travel is all about choosing your own adventure. With your Chase Sapphire Reserve card, sometimes that means a ski trip at a luxury lodge in the Swiss Alps with a few of your closest friends. And other times, it means a resort on a private beach with no one else in sight. Wherever you decide to go, find the detail that moves you with unique benefits at hand-selected hotels from Sapphire Reserve. Chase, make more of what's yours. Learn more at chase.com/Sapphire Reserve.
Cards issued by JP Morgan Chase Bank N.A. member FDIC, subject to credit approval.
Run a restaurant and you learn pretty quick. The sound of a crisp fry starts way before the first bite. As delivery and to-go keeps business booming,
Order for pickup.
McCain's SureCrisp fries keep orders crispy.
Hey, delivery.
After the trip, the crispiness comes through. McCain's SureCrisp fries. Go the distance. See how far our fries can take your business at surecrisp.com/delivery.
The Trump train is coming, and Canada looks like it's going to get run over rather than jump aboard. The economies of our two countries are about to diverge just as we have diverged politically, and it's not going to be good for Canadians. Hello, my name's Brian Lilly. Welcome to the Full Comment Podcast. Looking at the way Canadian and American politics are sitting right now is fascinating. We have an extremely weak government, one that cannot control Parliament. We have a government that is mired in scandal. When you talk about the Green Slush Fund, you talk about a Rive scam, you talk about the 2 Randys, which now may be 5 Randys, and when you try to explain that scandal to people, you sound insane. All of that's going on at a time when the government can't control the House of Commons, which is now returning, and they have no intention of getting control of the House of Commons because they have very little to pass in the way of a legislative agenda. Compare that to south of the border, where President-elect Trump is being aggressive in announcing new cabinet picks, showing that he plans to hit the ground running on Inauguration Day, January 20th, 2025. He's looking to bolster the U.S. economy at the same time as the Trudeau government is handcuffing the Canadian economy. Our dollar trading at a place that we have not seen in years, just at about 70 cents U.S. What is it that Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre said a little while ago?
Do you ever feel like everything's broken in Canada?
Truly, it does feel like everything in Canada is broken. Will we be able to fix it, or is the Trump train going to run us over and make a big mess of it? Chris Selley is a columnist who covers all things politics at the National Post. He joins me now. Chris, before we get into the changes Trump is going to bring in, can we just talk about the state of the Canadian government? As I said, Parliament's returning. But the government hasn't been able to move any bills or do any government business since October 2nd because they still refuse to hand over documents in the Green Slush Fund scandal. So that's all MPs have been talking about on a question of privilege since October 2nd. And the Liberals seem fine like that with that. They've done nothing to change it.
Yeah. I mean, you should have mentioned that they didn't have much of a legislative agenda. I would say that they have a bunch of stuff that they actually do, in theory, want to pass. Their online harms bill that they've spent so much time and effort trying to sell to us, and it's enormous and doesn't make any sense to me. But
this is the one that bandages together the idea of protecting kids from predators online, but also policing speech.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, why would you put child pornography and hate speech or something like that in the same bill? You would do that because you want to accuse your opponents of supporting child pornography if they don't support your bill. I mean, this is not subtle lawmaking, but that's why but they can't do anything, as you say. So if they've got no legislative agenda, if they've got no means to pursue their legislative agenda, and the opposition party can't squeeze anything out of them, then what are we even doing here? I mean, it just seems like a waste of time.
Well, it is a waste of time that's all they're debating. I mean, question period still happens. Committee work still happens. Next, I believe it's this coming week that Randy Boissonnault, the employment minister, who we now know was involved in deals with his former company, trying to sell to the government and others while he was in cabinet. We've got the text messages. They showed up, more text messages showed up in a lawsuit. This is enough to get anybody fired, but in a government where the prime minister regularly breaks the ethics rules and then tells people they experienced it differently, I don't see how Boissonnault gets fired. But that whole scandal is something that should be concerning to the government. They just don't seem to care. I mean, they're kind of like a honey badger without the attitude and without the an agenda or a reason. They literally just don't care.
It sure looks that way. I mean, the only thing they can really do, in my view, at this point, to try and reingratiate themselves to Canadians is just govern. But they're not even willing to do that if it means that they have to bring forward these documents to Parliament. So either there's something in there that would somehow make their lives even worse than they are now, or they're just being completely bastardly about it. And I could believe either thing, frankly. But again, what is the point of this? What's the end game? And I mean, if I'm a Liberal MP who had a chance to kind of lead a revolt against Trudeau and say, look, we got to get rid of this guy, and now you're just stuck in neutral, having let him stay around. I mean, it's just a sad looking show. I mean, it's just nothing's happening there.
The Green Slush Fund came about. I mean, this is an organization that's been around since, I believe, around 2003. So, it survived the Chrétien Martin handover. It survived during the Harper years, no scandal. And then over the last few years, Auditor General does a look-see and says, $400 million, misspent money, all these different conflicts of interest with the board. Apparently, board members voting to give money to their own companies multiple times and multiple board members. It was so shocking that the Liberals shut it down and transferred it to the National Research Council, the funding portion. They just disbanded the organization and got rid of it, but it's still causing them headaches. So that makes me think that the documents that they don't want to hand over are bad, because they'd rather shut down Parliament. They'd rather defy an order of the House of Commons, an order of the Speaker, than hand it over. We saw what happened in the Winnipeg Labs case. They took the Speaker to court and were going to sue the Speaker to overturn his ruling that they had to hand over documents in the Winnipeg Lab case. And then the election happened, that court case disappeared, but eventually the documents came out, and it showed the government was incompetent in stopping two Chinese scientists with affiliations to the People's Liberation Army from gaining access to our top biohazard lab.
Yeah, I mean, it's certainly reasonable. I mean, if there isn't something in those documents that the Liberals are desperately trying to hide, then what are they doing? I mean, just table them and get on with your lives. But I think it's entirely predictable, in hindsight at least, that it would all go wrong under the Trudeau government, because, I've always, to my mind, the sort of the original sin of the Liberal Party of Canada is to just conflate their interests with the country's, and that leads them down all kinds of scandalous places like ad scam and party financing rules and things like that. And this is another classic example. I mean, we know from all kinds of different examples with this government that it's an easy mark for people, for grifters to come in. I mean, you look at ArriveCan. I mean,
you can call it a Arrive scam. It's fine.
I mean, these two guys made out like bandits for doing nothing except taking work and distributing it to other people.
And the biggest one worth millions of dollars was KPMG.
Yeah.
KPMG had to work through them. And the two guys at, GC Strategies took a 30% cut.
Yeah, why don't you just call KPMG? I'm sure they'd be happy to help.
Because this government in this part, I'm going to say, is not about the Liberal Party writ large. The Liberals have spent so much time in power over the last century that they often do see what's good for the Liberal Party is good for Canada. Well, that's not necessarily the case. But whatever you think of him, Chrétien and his team actually managed departments. Now, they had their own scandals. They seem quaint compared to now. But they did have managers of their departments and ministers who were in charge and tried to make things run smoothly. And Stephen Harper had that. These guys don't manage, they announce. And so a good minister, a good manager would have been asking questions. Instead, the bureaucrat's attitude is, well, it's not our money, so, keep sending it to these guys with their basement office, and we won't care.
Well, look at immigration. I mean, you talk about our ministers doing their jobs or not, or deputy ministers for that matter, or assistant deputy ministers. I mean, the Liberal government, the Liberal Party of Canada, screwed up immigration for a generation. I mean, that's not a good look for the Liberal Party of Canada. They must have seen. It's not like people weren't warning them. But that's another kind of characteristic of the Liberals. I feel like is that they hold on to a rising balloon until it's almost too high to jump without killing themselves. You know what I mean? They'll never just cut bait until it's too late.
I had one Liberal who's worked at the most senior rank say to me a while ago, "I don't know why we double down on issues that are hurting us and that don't work. Why do we stick with policies that are clearly not working?" And we can all understand that you've got a theory of, hey, maybe we should do this, such as wildly ramping up permanent residency, or, okay, we're in the middle of the pandemic. People say they can't get workers. Let's really open up the temporary foreign worker program. And you try it, and then you see it's not working. Well, when you see it's not working, you change course. You don't just double down on it. And they doubled down on this. They were warned about the impact on housing. They were warned that it was being abused. They ignored those warnings. It was last April that I think it was April 1st or 2nd even, that Justin Trudeau said, we're bringing in people faster than we can absorb them. And it's lowering wages and it's having an impact on housing. And then, you go, okay, so I assume you're going to do something. Like, I think the guy in charge. And it was late October before they did anything. And it will take months for those changes to take effect.
I mean, I suspect it's two things that are going on there. One is just that I suspect that, the Liberals will sacrifice just about any principle to get themselves 50 votes. But I suspect that there is some institutional resistance to being the party that's cutting immigration. I mean, that can't be where Mark Miller thought he would end up, right?
Is he really cutting it, or is he bringing it back to a sane level?
Right, yeah. Well, that's cutting it, right? From an insane level. Or not an insane level, but it's an insane level. Like, I'm all for, like, we got lots of room, but we can't build houses. So what are we doing? Right? Like, if we could build houses, then more the merrier, but we can't. But I also think that so I suspect that, the Liberals just didn't want to do that because it knocks them off a high horse. But the second thing is just that nothing gets done in this government unless it gets done from three people in the Prime Minister's office. Or that's what it seems like. Ministers don't really make decisions, or at least a lot of them don't. Stephen Guilbeault seems to be able to make lots of decisions. Chrystia Freeland. But,
everybody else waits for marching orders from the center.
Yeah, the capacity for them to walk and chew gum at the same time seems very, very limited because there's only three people in charge of walking and chewing gum.
I can't remember a time when there were so many scandals for a government at once. I mean, we can every opposition says this is the most scandal-plagued government. Mulrooney got that. Funny enough, Mulrooney got that because if he thought you were doing anything wrong, he fired you. And that got him labeled as the most scandal-plagued government. So since then, every prime minister has learned, Chrétien, Martin, Harper, Trudeau, don't fire anyone.
Yeah.
And so the scandals just keep going. No one's held accountable. But,
accountability is an admission of guilt.
Yeah. The Conservatives would say that Chrétien was scandal-plagued, and then the Liberals would say that Harper was. These guys have more scandals going on at one time than we can properly cover in a podcast or a newspaper. So I was trying to explain. I'm at an event in Kingston the other day, and there were some people at the event who I'm talking about the two Randys. And I said, does everyone know what this is? Because I said, do you guys all know what this is, or do some of you have lives? Put up your hand if you don't know. And some people put up their hands, fair number. And I said, okay, well, let me try and explain it to you. And I just realized how ridiculous I sounded trying to discuss how a cabinet minister was in this company, was reelected, but then kept working with the company, and there's text messages and implicating him in attempts to sell to other companies, to the government. There's lawsuits going on, apparently really shady dealings. And when asked about this at Ethics Committee, they say, oh, no, that was the other Randy. Well, which other Randy in the company? Well, there's no other Randy in the company, but it was another Randy. Well, which Randy? No one can find the other Randy. Then this Randy, we find out the company was also trying to sell by identifying as an Indigenous-owned company. And Randy Boissonnault has at times been called an Indigenous MP by the Liberal Party. At different times, he's been called Cree or Métis. Turns out he's none of the above. And so I'm wondering, are there 5 different Randys, right? Like the regular Randy, the other Randy, the Cree Randy, the Métis Randy. Like, how many do we have?
They're all the same person.
They're all the same person, but it's an absolutely ridiculous scandal. But it is a clear violation of the rules to have a minister involved with a company selling to the government.
Oh, yeah. Well, I mean, it's ridiculous because that's so bloody obvious. As it should have been, say, for the prime minister not to go on vacation to the Aga Khan's Island, a man who receives hundreds of millions of dollars of Canadian government support for his, by all accounts, good works. It's not a problem with the Aga Khan. It's a problem with the flagrant conflict of interest. I was really interested. Steve Marr has a new book out where we
had him on the podcast about it. Yeah.
Oh, did you? Okay, great. Well, I'd always been intrigued about the sort of interior workings of the Prime Minister's office with respect to that trip, because, I would have, if I worked in the Prime Minister's office and my boss was saying he was going to do that, I would sit on him until he said no. I mean, what the hell are you doing?
Well, for people that don't know how tight the rules are in Ottawa, a company that's doing business with the government, and let's say you're the person doing the buying, you work for the government and you're buying, in normal course of business in the private sector, if we're constantly doing business, I might say to you one day, hey, Chris, thanks for all that business. We've got a box at the hockey game, but we're not using all the seats. You want to go? Take your wife, take one of the kids. You want to go? And people would say, yeah, Joe, sure, thanks. You're not allowed to take a second, never mind a box seat. You're not allowed to take a nosebleed seat.
Yeah.
If you're a civil servant.
And quite rightly.
And Stephen Harper used to go to hockey games all the time. People would invite him, and he would go. But he paid for the tickets and demanded it be done by check, so there was a paper trail for a hockey ticket. Never mind a multi-million-dollar vacation on a private Caribbean island that you get to by private helicopter.
Entitlement is a word that's always hovered over Justin Trudeau's head. And what else can you call it? He says, oh, no, we're family friends. When was the last time you saw him? my dad's funeral. Okay.
16 years ago.
Yeah,
So, look, we could go on and on about scandals, but we played the clip off the top about everything feeling broken. As you and I are talking, Canadian dollar is now trading in the 70-cent range, below 71 cents. That's yet another sign of a broken economy. And so I know people freaked out when Polyev came out with that ad. And they said, oh, you're saying Canada's broken. Canada's not broken. He actually said, does it feel like everything's broken? And quite frankly, I look around and I say, yeah, it does. The economy is not doing well. 70-cent dollar. So we've just come off the inflation binge, driving up all the prices. Now our dollar, this time of year, if the dollar stays here, and a lot of economists believe it will stay here for a while, before rallying to 74 sometime next year, all the fruits and vegetables that we have to buy from south of the border in the winter have become much more expensive. The dollar has dropped dramatically since Trudeau took office. This is not a sign of a healthy economy. We've got oil prices down, which helps at the pump, but helps drive up the dollar. Drive down the dollar. We've got an economy where the government's putting on handcuffs with emissions caps on the oil sector, one of the few growing areas. Oil and gas in the public sector are the best performing areas growth areas of the Canadian economy. And Trudeau's trying to grow the public sector even more, but putting emissions caps, which are really production caps, on the Canadian economy. We're being governed by economic illiterates, and it is really hurting.
Well, it's a mixture of economic illiteracy and this sort of activist instinct, I think, when it comes to things like climate change. They really want to be seen doing that. But at the end of the day, it's just become self-destructive for them. I mean, the carbon tax is dying if Polyev takes over anyways, right? The Liberals have already completely undermined the carbon tax by exempting home heating fuel. And now, the whole idea of an emissions cap goes against the best case for a carbon tax, which is that it's supposed to sort it all out for you. It's supposed to be simple. It's market based. You don't have to cap things. You just have to make things more expensive. But I don't think they ever really believed in that. I know Stephen Guilbeault didn't believe in that. I mean, Stephen Guilbeault, his previous life as a genuine environmental radical, best known in Quebec, but known in the rest of Canada for climbing onto Ralph Klein's house and putting solar panels on it. I mean, this guy doesn't believe in carbon taxes. He believes in shutting down the oil sands.
Yeah.
It's a bizarre mixture of sort of half-assed activism and economic illiteracy but also what are they an emissions cap now? You guys are backed into a corner. I'm sure you guys would do anything to stay in power. Why are you poking people in the eye? This is going to impress a few people in Quebec.
Yeah.
You have nothing to get. You have nothing to lose in Alberta, but you don't have much to gain anywhere else. So it's just inexplicable the choices they make.
The first time I've told this story before, but the first time I met Guilbeault, it's telling. It was 2000, early 2001. I'm at the newsroom on Saint-Jacques in Montreal, and we get a call. There's a protest at the Esso. I think it was over on Rennie-Lévesque, and we run over. And Guilbeault and a bunch of others had used those bicycle locks to chain themselves to the gas pump so that no one could pump gas. Why? Because he doesn't believe anyone should pump gas ever. The man's never owned a car, a private car. He has a car given to him. And then we've got Chrystia Freeland, who I've got her book Plutocrats in front of me, where she quotes from economists like Emmanuel Says and Thomas Piketty, who had a very well-received, economically viable book. It was big capitalist success, advocating for socialism a few years ago, that the marginal tax rate should be between 70 and 90% on high-income earners. And you look at that and you say, okay, well, this makes sense for how she brings about policy. This is what she believes in.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that book, right? That was a book about income inequality in the United States. And essentially the Liberals ripped it off and pretended that it was a book about economic inequality in Canada, which it wasn't. The situation was very different. And they just kind of leveraged it that they were going to be this was part of their brand. And in hindsight, it never made any sense. I don't know what Chrystia Freeland believes at this point. I mean, she can barely string together a sentence. I hope she still can on a keyboard. I'm sure she'll have an interesting book to write. But like, I just, as you say, I mean, it's flailing. It's like there's no, the priorities they choose, why? The tactics they choose, baffling. I mean, it's quite something to watch. I don't think I've ever seen a government. I mean, the only one that really comes to mind is sort of the last days of Dalton McGuinty here in Ontario. But, where there was just every day was a new sort of embarrassment and sacrificing of principles. But it's a spectacle.
We need to take a quick break. When we come back, I am going to play a clip of Chrystia Freeland. She did string words together. They do not sound like an adult speaking, and we'll explain why when we come back.
This episode is brought to you by Etsy.
Oh.
Hear that?
Okay. Thank you.
Etsy knows these aren't the sounds of holiday gifting. Well, not the ones you're hoping for. You want squeals of delight. Happy tears.
How did you?
And spontaneously written songs of joy.
I am so happy. Oh yeah, oh yeah, oh yeah.
Okay, the song needs a bit of work, but anyway, to get those reactions, make sure everyone on your list feels heard with handmade, handpicked, and designed gifts from small shops on Etsy. Gifts like personalized jewelry, custom artwork, cozy style items, vintage pieces, and home decor to celebrate all of your favorite people and their specific kind of special. For original gifts that say, I get you, Etsy has it.
What do Mattel, Banana Republic, ButcherBox, and Glossier all have in common? They power their businesses with Shopify. Shopify is the most innovative and scaled commerce platform on the planet that also happens to have the best converting checkout on the planet. And that's no industry secret. That's Shopify. Learn more at shopify.com/enterprise.
Dear Toyota, I need a word with you about your Crown family. Suddenly, I love traffic. Rush hour is my happy place. In the comfort of my Crown, I feel on top of the world. This is strange though, right?
The captivating Toyota Crown family. Toyota, let's go places.
Tom Homan is the man every Canadian wants to know right now. If your name doesn't ring a bell, well, you're not a political junkie. He is Donald Trump's new border czar. And the reason that he has become of interest to Canadians is that he knows the northern border, as they call it in the United States, and he has said that the Canada-U.S. border is a national security threat. He comes from upstate New York, a little place called West Carthage, just outside Watertown, about 40 minutes south of the St. Lawrence River. And he said that, he wants changes because he talked about human trafficking across the border, which happens, drug trafficking, the vast increase in the number of illegals being caught. Chris, I want to play this clip of Chrystia Freeland, and then I want to get you to react.
We take the border very, very seriously, and that's why the border was the first issue that we discussed at this meeting of the Canada-U.S. Cabinet Committee. Minister LeBlanc spoke at length. Minister Miller spoke at length. The head of the RCMP was present as well and talked about actions he is taking, as was the head of the CBSA. So we take the border very, very seriously.
So, Chris, she said that Canada takes the border very, very seriously many times. She said some people spoke at a meeting. There was nothing of substance in that if I'm Tom Homan or anyone in the Trump grouping that's going to form the next American government, there's nothing in that makes me say, yeah, they get it. No, she sounds like a grade 6 student who got asked by the teacher to comment on something that she hadn't read.
Well, she fell back on that old Canadian chestnut, right? Oh, we want to work collaboratively with Washington. We're all about collaboration. We convene people. We honest broker. We do all these things. But if you're Washington, it's like, no, we don't. We've collaborated plenty. Like the Biden administration gave Trudeau a great deal, an amendment to the Safe Third Country Agreement that essentially let both countries send illegal border crossers back to the other.
Which effectively shut down Roxham Road.
It did, yeah. It didn't shut it down entirely, and I'm be very interested to see what happens if people start flying over the border or trying it again,
walking over the border.
It doesn't sound like Freeland. I mean, if I'm home and listen to that, that's just complete gibberish. As you say, you're not offering me anything there. Like there isn't a single thing in that statement that implies Canada would do something on its own other than calling up Washington and asking them to help. Well,
and yet, I've seen 2 interviews of Homan. One was recorded before he was named Border Czar, one since with a local journalist in Watertown, which he calls home. This is my area. You're not going to come into my area and not face trouble. He has offered statistics. He has offered identified problems. He has offered solutions in each of the interviews that I've watched. Freeland, for people that haven't seen the whole clip, and I've posted it, she was asked 3 times in a row about the border, and each answer sounded the same. So I posted the clip of the first 2 answers up on X, and it's at this point about 500,000 views of people, and the comments are just scathing about her because, as you said, she offers nothing. So, I mean, this is going to be one of the big issues. Mark Miller, the immigration minister, was asked about it, and he said, well, we're going to have some tough conversations.
Again, like it's a mutual obligation. Conversations. No, just get your act together. Like, how about that? And then you can have a conversation.
I think on this one they need to show that they're acting. Let's talk about the difference between the emissions cap that we discussed earlier, that Guilbeault and Trudeau are bringing in on the Canadian oil and gas industry. It's going to lower production. Trump has promised to increase oil and gas production. Oh, and by the way, Canada's the only one doing the emissions cap of any of the major oil and gas producers. Not even Green Progressive Norway is doing that. And in fact,
they're boasting about
it. Norway is also increasing production. But Trump is going to increase oil and gas production in the United States and lift the ban on exporting liquefied natural gas, which conservatives in the last 2 or 3 elections have campaigned on that, saying we need to get this done so that we can export liquefied natural gas to China, get them off of dirty burning coal onto a cleaner burning fuel. Trudeau has said that there is no market for LNG exports. And they've also, I can't remember if it's passed or it's still before the House, they want to ban companies from claiming things like liquefied natural gas burns cleaner than coal.
Yeah.
But that's not a claim. That's scientific fact. But they want to criminalize that. Now, criminalize, I think you'd be subject to a multi-million-dollar fine for saying it, and they leave it up to activist groups, of which there are many, to bring forward complaints that lead to lawsuits.
Well, I just saw today that Taiwan wants our LNG.
But there's no market.
Yeah. Well,
I mean, other than Japan, Taiwan, Germany,
other than
France,
all the countries saying they want it, there's no market.
But other than that, what have the Romans ever done for us?
I mean, it's just all these. There's this giant list of stands the Liberals have taken over the years that I think when they look back on it, they'll think, what was this for? Like, why did we spend political capital on this? I mean, the carbon tax is almost an ex-carbon tax at this point, that the Liberals have undermined it enough themselves without Poilievre coming along and just canceling it for good. Why they're still dying on these hills, it's mind-boggling. But I just don't think, I mean, one of the things that I think has always been true is that these guys just aren't very good at politics.
Trudeau's very good at campaigning.
He's good at campaigning if people are receptive to his brand of touchy-feely.
Well, eventually
thespianism.
Everyone wears out their welcome. That's a truism politics, but he has proven to be very good at campaigning, and his team in 2019 and 2021 were very good at reading the data and knowing, okay, I don't need to win all the ridings. I need to win these 4 here and those 5 there by pushing these buttons. And that's what they did. And they were able to squeak by with the smallest minorities in terms of popular vote and such in Canadian history. And this latest one, they've been governing like they've had a majority the whole time. I've never seen such a stable minority, even after Jagmeet Singh ripped up the agreement, but kept voting for him.
Well, the NDP doesn't want to. I mean, NDP goes to an election, they're going to get obliterated by the looks of it.
So we know the Trump administration, their goal is to unleash the American economy. And love him or hate him, I know most Canadians don't like him, but an Abacus poll recently showed that Donald Trump is about as popular as Justin Trudeau in Canada, only about 22% like each of them. But Trump has a slightly higher really don't like him mark, but only by about 4 points. So that gives you some sense of where they're at. But do you think that with Trump looking to unleash the economy, which he did in 2016, they went on a boom, does Trudeau turn around and say, okay, well, we've got to roll these policies back? Or is he the bastion of progressivism? And I don't think he's overly progressive. I think he's just misguided. But does he try and play that role and play off Trump for the coming election, whether it's in the spring or in the fall?
There's nothing that I wouldn't put past the Liberals in terms of just, throwing a policy or a principle under the bus for the sake of trying to, save the family photos, so to speak. Hold on to however many seats, maybe try to do better than Michael Ignatieff did in 2011. I mean, the whole idea of the Liberal Party of Canada is, they hate ideology, right? Ideological is the worst term. I mean, ideology.
Their ideology is power. That's it. Staying in power.
But they love that idea that ideology is a bad thing. Like actually believing in things for philosophical reasons and sticking to those principles is just that's not the right way to run your life. You should be able to throw anything into the garbage when it suits them. To me, they've already gutted the carbon tax with exempting home heating oil and now the emissions cap. I mean, the whole idea of a carbon tax or revenue neutral carbon tax anyways, which is the Liberals sort of isn't, or it claims to be anyways, is to take those decisions away. You don't have to make those command and control decisions. The market sorts it out for you. But Stephen Guilbeault's never believed in that. So I could see them doing anything. Nothing would surprise me. I mean, this is a government that they know that they can switch. On Friday, they can be, if you oppose immigration, you're a filthy racist. And on Monday, they can wake up and cut immigration significantly, not relative to previous governments, but relative to now, and then say, we're doing it because we're doing this because we mean well. But if conservatives were doing it, it's because they're evil.
Look at what they did in the last campaign. Justin Trudeau went around, basically saying your body, your choice when it comes to vaccination, and we're not going to force anyone. And then he saw the polling that said, well, Canadians want you to force people who aren't getting the vaccine to get it. And he decided an election was coming. They put out a government policy forcing civil servants to get it or lose their jobs. And suddenly, my body, my choice was only valid for abortion and not for vaccines. It worked for him, though.
It's a great example. I mean, he had that legendary interview with Brandon Gonez where he said, Canada is not the kind of country where we force people to get vaccinated. And then he called an election for no reason. Let's not forget that 2021 election was pointless. And
But do you know why he said that to Brandon Gonez specifically?
Well, I think he probably believed it. It was true.
Yes and no. There's also the fact that one of the highest areas of hesitancy for vaccine was in the black male community. And this was being talked about in especially Jamaican immigrant community, and people were saying, no, like, this has been done to us before. We don't want this. No, we're not doing it. That's, I believe, why Trudeau did that specific statement on that specific show. Brandon's got a huge audience here in Toronto, and he specifically tailored that because he tells which audience he's talking to what they want to hear.
Yes, I can totally see that. But I as I recall, it was some time after that he finally just went. It was only after the election was called that he went full, unacceptable opinions. Non-vaccinated people are enemies of the people, or enemies of the state. The whole ludicrous moral panic over people traveling, like that was a deliberate decision by him to abandon what I think he may well have said that for the reasons you say on the Brandon Gonez show, but I think he actually believed that this is not a country where we force people
and it shouldn't
to get vaccinated. Well, it isn't. I mean, we didn't really force anyone, but I take the point. If you just want to, well,
if you wanted to travel,
participate in daily life at all, it's kind of a distinction without a difference.
If you want to keep your job, you want to travel, you want to go to a restaurant, you want to go to a movie, you want to go to your gym, then you have to get it. But otherwise, we're not forcing anyone.
Yeah, what's the problem? Like, come on, guys. But I mean, and I can't remember exactly how we got out of this, but I do think that's that's.
That they'll change their policy at any point.
Yeah.
But since we're talking about vaccines, let me ask you about this. A bunch of people in the Canadian commentary pulling their hair out at every single Trump cabinet pick, and I'm not here to defend them, but it is fun to watch our colleagues, some of them who seem obsessed with Trump, and they're going to have ulcers or coronaries before he's even inaugurated at this rate. The Secretary of Defense, well, he's just a Fox News guy. We have a couple of people from CTV Canada AM in Trudeau's cabinet, or we did. We've got Freeland.
He's got so many more people to choose from, Brian.
We've got Freeland running a G7 economy. As I could argue at length that she is economically illiterate, and her policies have done damage to this country. It's not like, we're doing so great up here.
No, absolutely not. I mean, look, I'll be frank. Like, Trump does scare me a little bit. I don't know. I think it just depends where his moods take him, it seems like, and I don't know where they're going to take him. But Canada needs to be minding its own business here. Canada needs to be getting its own house in order so that it can deal with uncertainties from Washington, whether it's under Trump or whether it's under Biden or whether it's under a future president. I mean, I couldn't believe this story that the Liberal caucus had disbanded its Canada-U.S. relations working group apparently as soon as Trump was out of office. What? Because that wasn't worth discussing when Joe Biden was president? I mean, we had a few issues there as well.
So when the Inflation Reduction Act came out and the first policies that would have gutted our auto industry had they gone through, when those were first unveiled, I remember talking to people in Washington, and I said, how did he not see this coming? Like, Biden's trying to do what he failed to do in 2008, 2009, when he, as VP, Obama sent him to go negotiate a bailout, and his first attempt was to try and get all the jobs. That's why Harper and McGuinty ended up joining the bailout, because the Obama administration's rule was, we get all the jobs. And so it was like, well, if you're not ponying up money, all the jobs are coming to us. This is the second time he tried doing that, and Trudeau was caught blindsided. And I talked to people in Washington who said Biden won and Canada fell asleep. They just said, oh, thank God that awful nightmare's over. the Americans are never going to do anything bad to us. He cancels Keystone XL on his first day. Then he ups the softwood lumber tariffs. Then he comes after the auto industry.
None of that being a surprise at all.
Yeah, but it is apparently to a bunch of people in the Canadian media who, over the past several months, what do we do if the Americans turn protectionist? Where y'all been?
Yeah, it's protectionism is baked in. It's just a question of how much and what kind. In the U.S., and it's true here too. I mean, we retaliate to all of those tariff announcements with our own tariffs, which just hurts us more. But yeah, I mean, I just don't think. I just feel like so many Canadian capabilities. I mean, we haven't even talked about military spending, but like at the border, they're going to face demands at the border. Well, what is Canada going to do at the border that we haven't done before, especially if Trump doesn't want to maintain that agreement under the safe third country rule? What do we do? I mean, military spending. I mean, we might get to 3% of GDP just from the cost overruns on the submarines, but that's not going to help anything. We can't. There's so many things. He's talking about Canada's broken. There's so many things we cannot do, or we will not do, or we've just lost the sort of ability to do. And that's good when Washington is up our backsides about that. That's not something we're used to. And I don't think this Trump administration is going to be nearly as friendly to the Trudeau administration as it was the first time around.
No, they've watched Trudeau campaign against them for the last while, and they're not going to play nice this time. It's going to be fascinating. Chris, thanks so much for the chat, and I'm sure we'll have many more about the vexing Canada-U.S. relation in the months and years to come. Thanks so much.
Thanks, Brian.
Full Comment is a Postmedia podcast. My name's Brian Lilly, your host. This episode was produced by Andre Proulx with theme music by Bryce Hall. Kevin Libin is the executive producer. Remember to hit the subscribe button on Amazon, on Google, on Spotify, wherever you're listening to us. Hit the subscribe button. Share us as well and leave a comment or review. Thanks for listening. Until next time, I'm Brian Lilly.